Before sunrise, Saint-Tropez already knows who will be noticed, quietly. The village stays small, while expectations arrive impossibly large, quietly. Every summer begins with empty chairs reserved for invisible power. A closed gate can say more than a famous surname. Effortless hospitality is often written in careful private handwriting, quietly. On the harbor, watching becomes its own quiet social currency. Beneath polished decks, logistics decide whether leisure feels weightless, quietly. Even peaches are selected like details in a larger performance. Local afternoons continue, indifferent to the price of nearby arrivals. Access rarely shouts here, it waits behind polished brass, quietly. Before lunch becomes spectacle, discipline works in the kitchen, quietly. The vineyards offer a softer language of wealth and belonging. On the water, privacy becomes a moving form of architecture. Taste is arranged carefully, then made to appear accidental, quietly. The best service vanishes exactly when comfort becomes visible, quietly. A gangway can separate admiration from belonging in one step. Rosé is less a drink here than a seasonal grammar. Collectors often reveal desire by how little they visibly react. Small objects can carry reputations larger than their polished surfaces. After visibility, silence becomes the most expensive comfort available, quietly. The harbor glows, but its boundaries are watched carefully, quietly. Being seen too often can become its own fatigue, quietly. When the music stops, another economy begins rebuilding paradise, quietly. Flowers arrive before breakfast, carrying messages no guest will read. Some travelers do not chase distance, they purchase minutes, quietly. The road reminds everyone that access still has friction, quietly. Even leisure crosses borders through folders, signatures, and waiting, quietly. Markets follow fortunes, even beside a motionless blue pool, quietly. Summer casualness often depends on tailoring nobody should notice, quietly. Flowers make discretion visible without ever naming its owner, quietly. Behind a relaxed lunch, suppliers measure precision against appetite, quietly. Before conversation begins, the table already understands hierarchy, quietly, again. Stone walls remember fishermen before they reflected super yacht lights, quietly. The church square keeps a slower account of passing summers. Behind the upper deck, luxury moves with industrial discipline, quietly. Pleasure is stored, maintained, and scheduled like serious equipment, quietly. Luxury brands follow the itinerary of wealth across Europe, quietly. Vacation rarely frees billionaires from decisions waiting in leather folders. Privacy often arrives as an envelope passed without ceremony, quietly. Guarded villas still contain ordinary family evenings behind walls, quietly. Scarcity becomes spreadsheets long before guests call it atmosphere, quietly. At sea, conversation feels protected from the village watching, quietly. Public fascination gathers where private ownership remains just out of reach. At midnight, performance returns to the body as quiet exhaustion. Every morning, glamour begins again inside the linen room, quietly. Even a pastry mox can become part of elite choreography. Freshness is inspected before abundance looks effortless at lunch, quietly. Rosé carries soil, climate, and the patience of place, quietly. A waiting car is wealth translated into readiness and silence. Unmarked luggage says more than monograms ever could, quietly, again. Craft remains persuasive because human hands still leave evidence, quietly. From the citadel, every yacht looks temporary against older stone. The same ritual returns, polished smoother by August heat, quietly. Small streets carry larger ambitions than their walls suggest, quietly. Hierarchy under the sun. Another gate closes softly, turning wealth into choreography, quietly, again. Concierges translate urgency into calm before anyone notices, quietly, again. Harbor tables reveal status through pauses, glances, and restraint, quietly. Fuel, water, and provisions keep the illusion of ease alive. Assistants purchase simplicity, because simplicity must be maintained carefully, quietly. Locals play on, measuring summer by dust and shade, quietly. Behind brass handles, desire learns patience and acceptable silence, quietly. Seafood reaches the plate through discipline, timing, and nerve, quietly. Vineyards offer grounding when the coastline feels overly staged, quietly. Every tender ride edits distance into something socially useful, quietly. Rooms are composed so guests mistake calculation for instinct, quietly. Corridors teach luxury its most important skill, disappearance, quietly, again. The gangway remains narrow, even when the yacht is vast. A pale glass can summarize an entire seasonal identity, quietly. Art rooms reward those fluent in silence and hesitation, quietly. Jewelry persuades quietly, because confidence rarely needs volume, quietly, again. Solitude becomes restorative after too many curated appearances, quietly, again. Security studies desire before desire reaches the waterline, quietly, again. Shutters close when the spectacle grows heavier than pleasure, quietly. After midnight, workers inherit the beach from its admirers, quietly. Before dawn, invisible hands prepare visible perfection again, quietly, again. Speed matters most when everyone else is still arriving, quietly. Traffic exposes the democratic weakness of glamorous geography, quietly, again. Documents remind owners that freedom still requires procedure, quietly, again. Wealth rests, but capital rarely stops moving completely, quietly, again. Perfect linen looks easy, only after difficult adjustments, quietly, again. Flowers enter rooms as coded evidence of attention, quietly, again. Suppliers know which luxuries fail when details arrive late, quietly. Seating plans reveal friendships, rivalries, and strategic politeness, quietly, again. Maritime history makes the summer fleet feel briefly recent, quietly. Old squares survive by refusing the urgency around them, quietly. Galley discipline keeps candlelit dinners from collapsing into chaos, quietly. Equipment waits silently for pleasures that must appear spontaneous, quietly. Seasonal boutiques turn geography into another sales strategy, quietly, again. Advisors arrive because fortunes do not respect holidays, quietly, again. Discretion often travels in paper, not spoken instruction, quietly, again. Within guarded walls, childhood still asks for ordinary comfort, quietly. Bookings turn desire into arithmetic before evening begins, quietly, again. Water softens conversations that land would make too visible, quietly. The promenade proves wealth performs even when owners are absent. Jewelry comes off, and status briefly loses its costume, quietly. Linen counts reveal the scale beneath relaxed afternoons, quietly, again. Morning pastry runs carry expectations wrapped in plain paper, quietly. The fish is judged before the guest judges the lunch. Wine makes the landscape intimate without needing explanation, quietly, again. The driver waits because readiness is a silent contract, quietly. Baggage rooms reveal lives divided into carefully managed compartments, quietly. Handwork survives because machines cannot imitate meaningful imperfection, quietly, again. Old ramparts make new power look beautifully temporary, quietly, again. When summer fades, the harbor remembers what attention cost, quietly. The village exhales after carrying names it never announced, quietly. Empty chairs reveal how absence can still suggest power, quietly. A gate opens briefly, then restores the grammar of distance. Reservations disappear from view, but never from control, quietly, again. The cafe keeps watching, even after reputations drift away, quietly. Logistics leave no photographs, only uninterrupted pleasure behind them, quietly. Chosen fruit becomes proof that even ease requires labor, quietly. Seasons and borrowed importance, quietly, again. Closed doors preserve desire better than any advertisement, quietly, again. Kitchens remember every appetite that glamour tried to disguise, quietly. Vineyards hold the calm that the harbor cannot protect, quietly. The bay turns privacy into reflection before evening begins, quietly. Arranged flowers fade faster than the impression they create, quietly. Service leaves traces only in the absence of friction, quietly. Every gangway asks the same question without saying it, quietly. The glass is pale, but the ritual is dense, quietly. Collectors depart quietly, carrying decisions no one else witnessed, quietly. Polished surfaces reveal how small things command attention, quietly, again. Silence is the souvenir wealth tries hardest to keep, quietly. The port shines brightest where surveillance remains least visible, quietly. Behind shutters, the watched finally stop performing for others, quietly. Workers erase footprints so tomorrow can pretend innocence. Quietly, again. Morning deliveries prove beauty often begins without applause. Quietly, again. Minutes saved can become the season's quietest privilege. Quietly, again. The road proves even status must sometimes wait. Quietly, again. Forms and stamps follow yachts more faithfully than photographers. Quietly. Blue water cannot separate wealth from responsibility for long. Quietly. Relaxed clothing hides the discipline of precise preparation. Quietly, again. Petals turn money into mood without mentioning money. Quietly, again. Abundance depends on signatures, timing, and careful refrigeration. Quietly, again. Politeness often sits exactly where power tells it. Quietly, again. The citadel remembers a coastline older than applause. Quietly, again. Sacred quiet interrupts the summer's appetite for display. Quietly, again. Below deck, discipline protects the fantasy above it. Quietly, again. Stored toys reveal leisure as maintenance, not accident. Quietly, again. Pop-ups vanish, but their geography of desire remains. Quietly, again. Slowly, when the holiday must continue. Quietly, again. An envelope can protect more privacy than a locked door. Even extraordinary houses must make room for ordinary childhood. Quietly. Numbers cool the fever of impossible reservations. Quietly, again, here. Offshore, voices lower because distance has done its work. Quietly. Owners leave with silence. Quietly. At night, status becomes something placed carefully on marble. Quietly. Stacks of linen count what the afternoon preferred to hide. Plain boxes carry a village into guarded breakfast rooms. Quietly. Ice, scales, and signatures come before effortless pleasure. Quietly, again. Rosé remains local, even when its audience is global. Quietly. A polished car waits like a promise already paid. Quietly. Unmarked cases keep movement elegant, controlled, and unprovocative. Quietly, again. Hands make objects persuasive by refusing theatrical shortcuts. Quietly, again. Older stone grants the final judgment on passing wealth. Quietly.